Thank you. Glad to be here. Thank you all for having me. I'll try to move quickly so we don't run out of time again. I know these talks are tight. Um, I'm going to talk about validating our packages that we write in-house. My name is Seth Green. I lead the data science team at Metrum Research Group. Um, Very brief word on Metrum Research Group. We've been around for a little while. We have sort of two main sides. We have a quantitative sciences side that does a lot of great modeling and simulation work. And we have a technology side that we have a platform called Metworks. That's our scientific computing environment that a lot of other folks use as well. And then we work on a lot of packages and other tooling. That's mostly what I'm going to talk about today. So validating our packages is a hot topic. It's one of the things that originally motivated this very conference, and it had a lively workshop at the Posit conference a month or so ago that I went to. The R Validation Hub has done a ton of great work on this, and a lot of other people as well. But a lot of that work is focused on validating packages that other people write that out in the open source community that then your organization wants to use. So this talk is also a little bit relevant to that, but it's really more focused on validating packages that you develop yourself that, within house. So we had a process for this that had been evolving over the years and was sort of in bad shape in a number of ways, in my opinion. And so we redid it in the past year or so. A lot of work from different teams within Metrum. And these were kind of our key principles here. We want to make sure we give the quality team and the regulators what they need in terms of documentation to feel good about us using these packages. But then we also want to streamline the process for the actual package developers. And this last point sort of should be obvious, I think, but it was hard to keep it in sight a lot of the time. This process our new process should encourage good software development practices, good documentation, good testing, all of that, and not add extra overhead, because what we found is some other processes we had in the past added this extra overhead that then made people take shortcuts on the stuff that we thought was actually the more important package development work. So that was one of our key principles. This is a big part was sort of our guiding light this whole way, and a lot of this comes straight from the R Validation Hub's work. But one of the big takeaways I had from that workshop at the Posit conference was that every organization has a slightly different process for how they want to validate things, and that is just sort of inevitable. But if we can have consensus on some core principles, that becomes very important for driving adoption and acceptance across the industry and in regulatory bodies, because they're going to get things that are slightly different from every group. But if they all sort of look the same and are looking at the same principles, that is an important point to keep in mind. So these are the four up top that we sort of coalesced around for our work, that again comes from a lot of work other folks have done. Documentation, having your code well documented so people know what it does, having it well tested to prove that it does that, that your package is being well maintained and is a stable code base, and there's active maintenance of it when bug fixes are needed. And this last piece is a lot about sort of the open source community and having your code base be open, but also even if it's closed source, you have a user community within your company, and you need to engage with them. So the one part of what we use is this MPN scorecard package we created, and I want to emphasize this uses a lot of the packages from this working group. We use the risk metric package under the hood. We take a lot of inspiration from the Cove Tracer package and also the Validator package. But the idea is we can spit out this PDF that has the ability to put some human in the middle input into the PDF if needed. But then it contains this automated assessment and then some of the things at the bottom needed for validation. I'll show you an example of one of these. This is one of our packages, BBR. So we have these categories at the top. We give you kind of a high level score on each of them. And then on the second page, we break down, these are the things we're measuring. Again, a lot of this comes from the risk metric package. We're actually using that package under the hood. And then we do testing, check the coverage. Down here, I'll talk about this in a minute. The traceability matrix is an important piece of it that I'm going to dig a little deeper into. And then at the bottom, we have our command check results. We have information about this is the system where the test was run and when it was run, and here's the test output, and here's the test coverage. So sorry if I'm flying through this, but all this stuff is available online. So what I wanted to get to is validation documentation typically has all these different pieces, and you can get up to, at one point we had 7 documents that we were creating for each package release, which was a lot of overhead. Our new process, the key point here is that all the necessary elements of validation, everything that the quality department and auditors would need to see, is contained within either that scorecard PDF or the package source code. And this a little bit shows, where the different pieces can be found. But I'm going to focus on this part in a minute. But the key thing is that now we can just really produce for each release one document that we sign, the relevant people sign that they've reviewed everything. And that's sort of the official quality document. And then these supporting artifacts that are the scorecard PDF and the package source code. And all the pieces that are needed are in there, and you can reference them from your one official document instead of having to create new documents that sort of copy paste over different pieces that already exist elsewhere. So the traceability matrix, again, I'm going to kind of jump through this quickly in the interest of time, but this is a key element in traditional software validation. It's very important to quality folks because it's useful, but also just auditors and people like that will expect to see this. The idea is that it's mapping the requirements that say what the software should do to the tests that verify that it does them. One of the things we struggled with, and obviously other people have too from the existence of this code tracer package, is that maintaining that explicit mapping can be very, a lot of overhead I put here. And I won't get too deep into all that, but I'm happy to if someone wants to talk offline. So what we did essentially is similar to what Code Tracer does, but again, this worked better for our quality department. It's the same idea, but we focused on the exported functions. So this is anything, essentially what your package says it does. Instead of maintaining explicit requirements, we enforce this in code review. You need to have good documentation. You need to say what each of these exported functions does, and anybody should be able to read through that document and tell, okay, this is what this function should do. So for each exported function, we link to the source code, then we link to the documentation file, and then we link to any test files that call that function. Now, some of these are going to be testing that function explicitly. Other ones are calling this function like for the purpose of helping test something else, but that still does test that function. So by doing that mapping, we have that traceability matrix. We have the test code here. We have the test output below, and then we have the documentation that serves as requirements that if you enforce writing good documentation, this can serve as the requirements that say this is what the software should do. And those are kind of the highest level pieces of that. I think that's probably all we have time to get into today. I put some links on here. This is our package that we use, mpn.scorecard. These are some of the related tools that I mentioned. Like I said, a lot of great work being done out there, and we certainly took inspiration from a lot of these folks. So yeah, thank you very much.
Awesome, Seth. I think our next speaker has some difficulties in getting into the backstage, so maybe we are able to take some questions, and we'll have some time here. Yeah, cool. Yeah. So maybe one question from me. You mentioned about validation hub. Like, are you part of the validation hub effort over there?
I'm not part of it, and that's something we've talked about joining in the past year or so. But I've certainly read a lot of their things and been to a few of their workshops and things like that.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. I feel like I also heard people talking about maybe having a community repository over there. So that basically for those PDF validation reports over there, hopefully it could be shared across different companies, so we don't need to do the same thing again. I wonder whether you have any thoughts around that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, there's a few things that for us, at least, for issues with something like that. One of them is that our quality folks, at least, were kind of insistent that you should be validating these things on the system on which you intend to use them. For us, that's the MetWorks platform. For others, it's going to be some other system. So that's one of the big things that I think would make it hard to have a centralized repository in that way. However, I think what is really useful is this work they've been doing of this is how we validate it. These are kind of some tools to make it easy. And then all you have to do is download that stuff, run through it and generate those documents on your own system.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Maybe also curious, like maybe in your company, like in terms kind of like making this effort work, like who are the key people getting involved? Like I assume there are quality people, there are IT people, there are data scientists. Just curious, like how does the team being set up? Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, this was across a lot of different departments. The software developers, the package developers, and the quality folks were the biggest two. But then another group that got involved a lot was the users of the packages, because that's an important piece of this whole thing, is sort of engaging with users about how they do bug reports and how they expect to see, like release notes and things like that, to let them know when a package has changed and what's changed in the package. So yeah. One other thing I just saw come through on the chat is the question about validating Python and Julia. That is definitely something that's come up for us as well. And one of the things we plan to do with MPN Scorecard in the certainly next year, hopefully more than the next 6 months, is adapt it basically the same. I mean, looking through this, the same kind of principles should apply to any of these kind of package, any kind of scripting package that somebody actually interacts with. All of these things are still important. And this kind of traceability matrix is, documentation and testing is also important. So we set this up in a way where we're hoping that it will be minimal effort to take the Python package tooling and Julia package tooling and organization and map it to basically that same framework and create a similar PDF.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, definitely. That's also a question from our side. Like right now, I think people are moving like not only R, but to also other open source packages over there. Yeah. I'm also curious, like from your organization, have you submitted like maybe our code to Health Authority, and whether you need to show those reports to the Health Authority so far, or no inspections yet?
No. I mean, we have definitely submitted our code. No one has ever come and asked us that I'm aware of. I've been here for about 4 years. No one has ever come and asked us for these kind of, show me that you validated this exact R package. So in a way, it's sort of like a backstop. If anyone ever did come through and ask about it, then we have it. But we've certainly submitted plenty of our code to various regulatory bodies.
Yeah, that's very good to know, because like sometimes we also debate whether we share the validation report proactively or we just keep it in our library in case there is a inspection coming up. Yeah.
Right. Sure. Yeah.